Then remember how we talked about making demarcations where the chapters turn or they change topics? Well, we're right here now. Workforce, right here, 1-12. And all you need to know from here is the following below are points to consider and think about regarding your workforce, right? These are all things you don't need to memorize. Each county's requirement to register a business may vary. You will need to research the county's website where your business is located and find what the county requirements to register your business, right? So this is the registration. This is when you're basically official. We're still right here, business planning and organization, chapter 1. Boom. We're right here under zoning permits. This is the county level under registration. Okay. And then most importantly, corporate filings and fees. And so fictitious name, you want to highlight this so it stands out for you. If you're looking to advertise your business to the public using a name other than your name or the name of your corporation, you must, underlined, you must comply with the Fictitious Name Act, okay? Further down, it states, any person who fails to comply with this act commits a misdemeanor of the 2nd degree, okay? So you want to highlight that because they'll ask you questions like this. And then further down, a fictitious name must be advertised. They'll ask you this question a lot. So you want to know this. The fictitious name must be advertised one time in a newspaper in the county where the applicant's principal place of business will be located, and proof of publication need not be submitted. Then additionally down here, if a change of ownership occurs, the owner of record must file a cancellation and registration within 30 days of the change. That's a timing question. They're going to ask you a lot of questions about time requirements. Fictitious names are valid for 5 years. That's another test question they'll usually ask you. It's valid for 5 years, and it expires on December 31st of the 5th year, right here. I put a little star next to that just so that way it pops out to me. And then they might ask you, during what time window must you renew? And as you can see right here, I underlined it because it's between July 1st and December 31st. Okay? And so let's flip back to the table of contents because we just discussed 1-15. You notice how you don't see fictitious name on here? That's why you need to know the contents of the chapters. So that way you know where to look. You might want to go ahead and create your own separate tab. But when it talks about fictitious name, you already know you're coming straight to chapter 1. Because remember, we developed and we have a feel for this chapter. And then directly over, we have 1-15, which talks about what? We talk about sales tax. Why is that even important? Well, because in the state of Florida, your collections of 6% retail tax on certain items. Well, you need to create an account in which you collect the taxes and then you pay them when they're due. Okay? So DR1 application for certificate of registration, which is sales tax, and it's 6% retail sales tax. And you do this with the Department of Revenues right over here. Here's the website. In addition to that, you file for your EIN number. What it stands for is Employee Identification Number. And most importantly, when you're filing your EIN number, the form must be filed on or before the 7th day after the date on which business begins. Okay? And here's the information where you can find that. So now let's go to 1-16, the next page. We're on the license, right? And then within the license section, we're talking about qualifying agents. But the most important part you want to know under the license is the primary qualifying agent for a business organization is jointly and equally responsible for the supervision of all operations of the business organization, for all field work at all sites, and for financial matters, both for the organization in general and for each construction job. You just want to underline that so you know. And then here you have just some other generic stuff. Another thing is regulations. Where are we at? We're right here, 1-16, regulations. Well, this is brief. And then we have taxes. As a business owner, you will pay taxes. You have federal and state income tax. You have an investment tax credit. You have employment tax, you have unemployment taxes, you have excess tax, you have property tax, inventory tax. This is basically getting you ready to know that you will be paying taxes. Get ready. And then finance. That's another portion of your business that you need to figure out. These are all just brief overview questions that you want to ask yourself. Leasing. These are all things that you need to put into consideration. I'm going briefly through them because they're not as important. These are general questions that you will ask or will be asked when you're setting up a business structure. And then most importantly, record keeping, advertising and marketing. And then here, 1-19, which congratulations, you've basically made it to the end of the chapter. 1-19, checklist for business startup. Here that is. Last but not least, we're on the category business management. This is a different topic, so I created my demarcations. Under this, you want to highlight some principal duties at the very bottom right here of an effective responsible manager include, but are not limited to, planning, organization, directing, controlling, standardizing, assigning, communicating effectively. Basically, all of this highlighted section right here are all of these right here. Okay, right? But the most important part, as we discuss, is we want to get comfortable with where that information is found. So we're right here, and it outlines all of that. The next most important one is 121, right? 121 talks about dissolution, termination of a business organization. And usually this happens in partnership and there's the corporate. Well, in partnership, dissolution or termination, when a partnership comes to an end, there are basically 3 steps which they go through. First step is dissolution, winding up. Second, termination. Third. And what you want to do is you want to highlight the word dissolution so it stands out. So dissolution is not to be confused with termination. Completely different things here. On dissolution of partnership is not terminated but continues until all of the partnership affairs are completed through process generally referred as winding up, right? And then further down, termination is the point in which when the partnership affairs are wounded up, and winding up or liquidation is the actual process of selling the assets, paying the liabilities, and distributing the excess of partnership after dissolution, right? And then you want to highlight Partnership Act dissolution may be caused by the express will of any partner at any time. And then this right here, a partnership is dissolved by any event that makes it unlawful for the business of partnership to be carried on and for the member to carry on in the partnership. 2, death of a partnership. Then last but not least, we have through a bankruptcy and then a court decree. Then further down here, it talks about corporate dissolution. Let's flip back to the first page, 1-22, corporate dissolution. So we flip over to 1-22, corporate dissolution and liquidation. There are 2 types of dissolution, and they should be distinguished. One is through voluntary dissolution. The other one is involuntary dissolution. Voluntary is in which everybody agrees, done deal. Secondly, involuntary dissolution, in which corporate is dissolved by an act, the Department of State, or decree of a circuit court filed by the Attorney General. Basically, it's a court order. You have no choice. And then the same way we discussed in the other one, the Florida law prescribes 3 procedures for the voluntary dissolution of a corporation. And then there are some exceptions. You want to highlight these exceptions. There's one, and there's another one on top of this page. A distribution of perceivable property, the corporation may become subject to recapture provision. So that's that. So as we make our way to 1-24, these are resources that you want to know. And remember, table of contents, 1-24. And so example here is if you need permits involving state highway and access to road, state licensing agencies, we have the construction, electrical engineering, land surveyors, all of that is outlined. And then required forms, right? So once we make our way to the table of contents, once again, you see it, required forms, 1-26, 940 employer annual unemployment tax return. So what I do to remember this kind of stuff is 940 year, right? So we know that the form is 940 and you know it's an annual. So I mix my words together and I say 940 year, like I'm saying 9 for the year, right? So year. And we know that you filed this form 940 every single year. And then quarterly taxes, I'd say something like 941 quarter, because you file this every quarter, and we all know there are 4 quarters. So 941 quarterly tax return. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it does, and hopefully it helps.